Sound of a crackling fireplace, the tense clink of fine china, the oppressive silence of a room full of hatred. The reading of the will was held in the grand library of Blackwood Manor, a room that smelled of old leather, dust, and my husband's favorite pipe tobacco. Arthur had been the heart of this house, and without him, the place felt like a beautifully preserved corpse. His children, Liam and Chloe, sat opposite me on the Chesterfield sofa, their postures rigid with a sense of entitlement they'd worn since they were teenagers. Liam, 28, with his father's jawline but none of his kindness, swirled a brandy he'd helped himself to from Arthur's private reserve. Chloe, 25, surveyed the room with the cold calculation of an appraiser, her eyes lingering on the Picasso sketch above the fireplace. Mr. Albright, Arthur's longtime lawyer, a man with kind eyes and a spine of steel, cleared his throat. He held a simple, single-page document. "This is the last will and testament of Arthur Blackwood, dated 5 years ago," he began, his voice echoing in the silent room. Liam leaned forward, a smirk playing on his lips. Chloe shot me a look of pure venom. "To my son, Liam, I leave the sum of $100,000, hoping it will help you find the ambition that has thus far eluded you." Liam's smirk vanished. "What?" "To my daughter, Chloe, I leave the sum of $100,000, and my hope that you will learn the value of things that cannot be purchased." Chloe's face contorted in disbelief. Mr. Albright continued, his gaze finally settling on me. "The remainder of my estate, including Blackwood Manor, my controlling shares in Blackwood Industries, and all other assets and holdings, I leave to my beloved wife, Eleanor. She has been my rock, my confidant, and the true guardian of this family's spirit." The silence that followed was atomic. Then, it broke. "No!" Liam roared, launching to his feet. "That's impossible. She brainwashed him. This is a forgery." Chloe was more insidious. She stood slowly, her voice a venomous hiss. "You manipulative witch. You gold-digging serpent. You think you can just waltz in here and take what belongs to us? Our blood?" I said nothing. I simply folded my hands in my lap, my back straight, my face a calm lake. They expected tears, pleading, outrage. They received silence. It infuriated them more than any shout could. "My name is Eleanor Blackwood. I am 48 years old. I was not Arthur's first wife, just his last. For 20 years, I loved that man. I nursed him through his first heart scare, I managed this vast household, and I provided the peace his chaotic business life lacked. To his children, I was always the interloper. The fortune hunter. They never saw the love, only the prenup. And now, they had shown their hand. The true betrayal happened an hour after Mr. Albright left. I was in my sitting room, trembling slightly from the confrontation, holding a photo of Arthur. The door burst open without a knock. Liam and Chloe marched in. Liam was holding the will Mr. Albright had read. "This," Liam spat, waving the paper, "is a mistake. It doesn't reflect our father's true wishes. He would never disinherit his own flesh and blood for you." "He was not in his right mind," Chloe added, her eyes glinting. "We have witnesses. The staff. They'll say you isolated him, that you manipulated him in his final days. This was their plan all along. Intimidation. Slander. There is nothing you can do," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "The will is legal. It's been filed with the court." Liam let out a harsh laugh. He walked to the fireplace, where embers still glowed from earlier. "Is it?" My breath caught in my throat. "Liam, don't." He looked me dead in the eye, a cruel, triumphant smile on his face. "There's no will. There's no proof. Without this, it's your word against ours. And who do you think a judge will believe? The grieving children? Or the new wife?" He tossed the single, damning page into the fire. The flames licked at the edges, the paper curling, blackening, turning to ash in a matter of seconds. Chloe watched, a satisfied smile on her perfectly painted lips. "Now," Liam said, dusting off his hands. "You have until the end of the month to get out of our house." They left me there, staring at the ashes of what I thought was my future. But what they didn't see was the faint, almost imperceptible sigh of relief that escaped my lips. They had taken the bait. Arthur was a brilliant, meticulous man. He built an empire from nothing because he trusted no one and planned for every contingency. Especially when it came to his children, they are spoiled, Eleanor, he told me after his first major heart attack, his hand in mine, they see this life as their birthright, not something to be earned. They will turn on you the moment I'm gone. I won't let them destroy what we've built. So, we devised a plan. A simple, elegant trap. The will they burned was real, but it was a decoy, one of two identical, legally binding documents executed on the same day. The first, the A version, was the one we allowed to be easily found, the one we knew Liam, with his connections, would eventually discover existed. It was the bait. The second, the B version, was the true will. It contained an additional, devastating clause that the A version did not. It was held in a secure, off-site vault by a different law firm entirely, Covington and Gray, a firm that specialized in high-stakes estate litigation and had no other connection to our lives. Mr. Albright was aware of its existence but was instructed never to speak of it unless I initiated the process. My unique skill, honed over 20 years in this lion's den, was patience and perception. I saw the greed in Liam's eyes when he talked about the company. I saw the avarice in Chloe's heart every time she looked at her mother's jewelry, which Arthur had gifted to me. I documented everything. Secret recordings of their threats, financial records of their reckless spending, a log of every cruel word aimed at me and their ailing father. The stake was not just money or a house. It was dignity. It was justice for the man they had neglected, for the love they had scorned. It was my entire life. The foreshadowing was the look in Mr. Albright's eyes at the fake reading. It wasn't pity I saw. It was anticipation. The day after they burned the will, I made a single phone call. "It's Eleanor Blackwood," I said into the phone. "The contingency has been activated. Please proceed with the Blackwood protocol." I then visited Mr. Albright. I placed a small, encrypted audio recorder on his desk and played a clip from the day before. "You have until the end of the month to get out of our house. Covington and Gray are filing the true will with the probate court as we speak," I told him. "I need you to serve Liam and Chloe with a preliminary notice. A notice of eviction from Blackwood Manor, effective immediately, and a freeze on all their personal and joint accounts linked to the Blackwood Trust." Mr. Albright allowed himself a small, grim smile. "With pleasure, Eleanor." The power shifted in that moment, in the quiet of a lawyer's office. The first domino had been tipped. My stepchildren were still celebrating their victory, oblivious that the ground was already crumbling beneath their feet. They stormed into the library 2 days later, their faces purple with rage. The formal notices were clutched in their fists. "What is the meaning of this?" Liam bellowed, throwing the eviction notice onto the desk where I was calmly writing correspondence. "How dare you? This is our home." "It was," I corrected him softly, not looking up. "According to the true and legally binding last will and testament of Arthur Blackwood, version B, filed with the county this morning, it is now solely mine." "There is no version B." Chloe shrieked. "You're bluffing. We destroyed it." I finally looked at them, meeting their fury with icy calm. "You destroyed a document, children. Not the truth. Your father and I created 2 wills. The one you so foolishly burned was the honey trap. This," I said, tapping a much thicker document now sitting on the desk, delivered by courier an hour earlier, "is the real one. It contains everything the other one did, plus one additional clause." Liam's anger began to curdle into confusion. What clause? It states that any beneficiary who actively attempts to subvert, destroy, or contest the will shall have their inheritance voided entirely. You didn't just try to subvert it. You committed a felony by destroying a legal document. You get nothing. Not the 100,000. Nothing. The manipulation came next. Eleanor, please, Chloe begged, her voice switching to a whine. We were grieving. We weren't thinking straight. Dad would never have wanted this. Your father knew exactly what you were, I replied. He designed this specifically for you. He knew your greed would be your undoing. Then, the final, desperate bargaining from Liam. We'll sue. We'll tie this up in court for years. You'll never see a cent. I smiled then, a small, cold thing. I've already sued you. For the intentional destruction of a will, for emotional distress, and for the return of all the loans your father gave you over the past decade, which total over $2 million. The evidence is all here. Recordings of your threats, your boasts, your plans. Covington and Gray is very, very good at what they do. By the time they are finished, you will not only be penniless, you will be in debt to me for the rest of your miserable lives. The blood drained from their faces. They finally saw it. The trap had been set 10 years ago, and they had walked right into it. Their downfall was not just inevitable, it was already complete. The news spread through our social circle like wildfire. Arthur's sister, Aunt Beatrice, a woman who had always been wary of me, called. Eleanor, my dear, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Arthur told me, years ago, that he had a plan to protect you. I didn't know the details, but he said if this ever happened, I was to stand by you. The children, they are their mothers through and through. Vicious and entitled. The family stands with you. It was the final validation. I found Liam and Chloe in the grand foyer, surrounded by half-packed suitcases. The fight had gone out of them, replaced by a hollow shock. Why? Liam asked, his voice broken. Why didn't you just tell us? And spoil the test? I said. Your father wanted to give you one last chance. If you had accepted the initial will, even with your meager inheritance, a separate trust would have been activated for you both. A generous one. He hoped against hope that you would show a shred of decency. By burning that document, you didn't just prove him right. You signed your own financial death warrant. Chloe looked at me, a final flicker of hatred in her eyes. You enjoyed this. No, I said truthfully. I endured 20 years of your condescension and cruelty for the love of your father. This is just administrative cleanup. The collapse was swift, public, and utterly brutal. The lawsuit proceeded. The recordings were damning. The judge not only upheld the true will in its entirety but also found Liam and Chloe liable for damages. Their personal assets, cars, jewelry, bank accounts, were seized to pay the judgment. The loans from their father were deemed due immediately, plunging them into insurmountable debt. Liam, who had leveraged his future inheritance for business deals, was sued by his partners for fraud. His reputation was annihilated. I heard he left the country to escape his creditors. Chloe, whose entire identity was her wealth and social status, found herself utterly frozen out. Her so-called friends vanished. The boutiques where she had unlimited credit closed their doors to her. She was forced to take a job as a receptionist, a humiliating fall that was gossiped about in the very circles she once ruled. The final, brutal twist was the sale of the contents of Blackwood Manor. I held a very public auction. I kept a few pieces of personal significance, but everything else, their mother's furniture, their childhood belongings, the art they coveted, was sold to the highest bidder. I watched from the balcony as strangers carted away the physical remnants of their privileged lives. I donated the proceeds to a charity for underprivileged artists, a cause Arthur had loved and his children had mocked. I didn't keep Blackwood Manor.
It was a gilded cage filled with ghosts. I sold the estate for a fortune and used the money from the company shares to endow the Arthur and Eleanor Blackwood Foundation, funding arts and education. I bought a modern, sun-drenched apartment in the city, a place that was entirely mine, with no history, no shadows. I travel, I sit on the boards of charities, and I live a life of quiet, purposeful peace. The very weapon they used against me, the destruction of a legal document, became the instrument of their total ruin. They thought they were destroying my claim, but they were only incinerating their own. They thought a piece of paper was the source of my power. They never understood that the real will, the unbreakable, enduring will, was forged in 20 years of loyalty and love, and hardened in the fire of their betrayal. And while they are now scrambling in the dirt they so clearly deserved, my world, at last, is finally my own. If you believe in protecting what's rightfully yours, let me know in the comments. And for more stories about turning the tables, subscribe for new tales every week.